morning. It's a great honor to be selected by the class of 2013 to impart some final words of advice as they embark upon the rest of their lives. Your selection certainly speaks to your impression of me as an educator, but moreover, it speaks to the influences in my life without which I would not be standing before you today. My mother, Sue Ellen, taught me how to think. My father, Reynold, taught me how to act. My beautiful wife, Jessica, and my son, Anderson, have filled my life with light and love and purpose. I also owe many thanks to the people of Winchester and to the school and district administration for placing a high value on quality education and for fostering an environment in which that education can flourish. Most of all, I must thank my colleagues, Chris Hyatt, Mark Chase, Lauren Maloney, Suzanne Bowles, Allison Kangas, Barbara Lettieri, Anna McWilliams, Shanti Cooper, Madison Leverage, Janet Needham, Katie Reese, and Betty Crowley bring a contagious passion for their craft each and every day. It's a supreme pleasure to work beside such intelligent, compassionate, and driven individuals. I have the utmost respect and love for each of them and consider myself lucky and humbled by my inclusion in that group. They're a remarkable assembly of dedicated professionals, and even more when one considers the departures that we've faced over the past several years. Each time that I hear we're losing a department member, I worry that a bit of the culture, the community, and the dynamic between us might be lost. None of these worries were so great as during the well-deserved retirement of our director, Margie Harvey, last year, but my fears were quickly alleviated when Chris Hyatt took over admirably without missing a beat. If only the Patriots would be so lucky in a few years. When an organization can quickly replace talent with talent, it says a lot about that group's character. Our latest departure is Katie Reese, a woman for whom I have great respect and admiration. Katie's not only a brilliant mind, but a diligent and empathetic educator. I'll sorely miss our professional collaborations, our political discussions, and our friendship, but I know that she's great. She's destined for many great things as she begins a new chapter in California. As a final remark about our department, I'd like to point out that for each of the last 5 years, the graduating class has selected a member of the Social Studies department to give this commencement speech. I'm honored to carry on that tradition and humbled that you find us so interesting and engaging. It's ironic that the field of study, stigmatized for a lack of real-world application, has been so consistently sought after for advice on the real world. But before you leave, I'd like to give you my perspective on where I see your generation's place in history. Despite recent tragic events, it's important to first note the fact that we happen to live in a place and time of unprecedented peace and prosperity. At no other time in history, and in very few other places on earth, can people make that claim. Our comfort is not normal. Be humbled by this fact, and be ever grateful for the hard work of those that came before you to make this remarkable civilization possible. That work is a struggle that began almost 800 years ago against an ever-weakening, ever-dying social structure known as patriarchy. Patriarchy asserts that the natural social order consists of superiors and subordinates. It says that people born into power and wealth deserve it, and people born into poverty and oppression also deserve it. Patriarchy says this is right and good because it's in the best interest of the lowborn to obey and trust the elites because they truly know what is best for everyone. Patriarchy was on the mind of Shakespeare's Henry IV when he lamented that uneasy lies the head that wears the crown, as well as Kipling's when he described the white man's burden. Since the Magna Carta, and even generations before that, the patriarchal order has been waning. The Renaissance, the Scientific Revolution, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment all challenged authoritative rule. Philosophers described justice through equality and the right to life, liberty, and property. Scientists uncovered the laws of the universe. Brave pioneers who embodied these noble truths were put to the sword and the flame by religious and political authorities who saw their tyrannical grip slipping away. Violence is the last resort of those who have already lost. When viewed in this context, the American Revolution clearly has much less of a concrete beginning. Our founders were not so much pioneers as they were stewards and custodians of a revolution that began many years before their births. When they had finally shaken free of the fallacy of monarchical rule, they instituted a new social contract, which guaranteed rights to all white men who owned property. It seems the revolution didn't have a concrete ending either. Over the next 2 centuries, our civilization addressed these shortcomings as the revolution continued. Women, workers, and people of color have made the most notable gains in our nation's history. At first, it was only a few token bits which only existed on paper, but through the decades, brave individuals fought and suffered for tangible justice, which only very recently became legitimately manifest. It's important to understand that all of these movements are fundamentally the same. Galileo, Mary Wollstonecraft, Thomas Jefferson, Gandhi, Dr. King, and Cesar Chavez were all fighting on the same team for the same thing against the same enemy. Though they all experienced some successes, their revolution is far from over. All the while during our struggle, there's been fierce resistance. Those with patriarchal power are very reluctant to change. The revolution sometimes suffers setbacks. Monopolists, racists, and chauvinists defy it at every turn. The right to vote is under attack in states like Florida and Pennsylvania. Workers' rights are flagging, while the power of monopolistic forces increasingly dominates and limits our political and economic liberty. Bigots continue to impose their views on who can love whom and in what way, while the women who will graduate today face a workplace in which they will earn 20% less than the male graduates simply because of their gender. This may sound bleak, but be hopeful. Know that in the long run, liberty always triumphs. Know that patriarchy always loses, and it will continue to lose, as it has for the past 8 centuries. Be assured that justice will win out, but do not rest on that fact. History judges patriarchs harshly. When I teach the civil rights movement in my class, I show a picture of some young black and white students who are attempting to peacefully desegregate a lunch counter in North Carolina. Behind them stand a mob of racists who are berating, harassing, and dumping food on the protagonists. It's easy to see in that picture who's on the side of justice and who's on the side of evil. In 30 years, when we look back on who stood for marriage equality and who stood for patriarchy, it will be just as easy. After all, they're fighting the same struggle. So, class of 2013, choose your sides and your actions carefully. In this digital age, nearly everything you do and say will be recorded and preserved forever, and your future employers, partners, and descendants will judge you with much prejudice. If you ever find yourself confused or wondering if you're making the right choice, ask yourself this: am I acting out of love? Am I choosing this path because of my love for others or because of my fear and resentment? If you act out of love for your fellow man, you can never go wrong, and you will always be on the side of liberty and justice for all. Congratulations to the class of 2013. May you always be filled with humility, curiosity, and love. Thank you, and God bless.